This is Getting Past Subtitles. My name is Sean Peel.
And I'm DK Lee.
And welcome to a new week. I guess a new month, depending on whenever time you're watching this. We finished the last season. And a new season.
Series.
A new season of series.
Yes.
Series season thing. Yeah, we're kicking off anew. We're coming off our comedy series. And we are merging quite nicely from the last episode, Shaolin Soccer. And we are going into full-on Kung Fu, full-on martial arts in a very different tone. And we're going to talk about one of, like, the pillars of, like, film martial artists. And that would be Jetley.
Yes.
And particularly for me, one that I do not know much about, really, or that I have seen many films. Not that I, like, don't know who Jetley is. Like, I know, but I haven't really seen any of his films, or, like, if I have, maybe it's in, like, bits and pieces. Like, I do know, like, his face, and I'm sure that, like, my family's had copies of his films on DVD around along my life, but, and if I have seen it, like I said, I mean, I was probably young, and I really don't remember, so for all intents and purposes, like, it's kind of completely fresh, you know? It's just been, like, an urban legend in my life, in that sense. So, so I'm pretty excited to really kind of see that. And honestly, the same could be said with, like, a lot of the other people, like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan. Like, there's a lot of movies that I haven't seen from them. So every time I watch them, it has a very refreshing, like, experience for me. Because it's funny, like, they do make great movies, you know? They do bring something to the table. And with this movie that we're watching, it's kind of the same thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like, Jackie Chan has so many movies.
Yeah.
And to be honest, some of them are not that great, you know?
Well, like, in the era, like, you know, like, from, like, the 60s through, like, early 2000s, when, like, martial arts films are, like, really booming during certain times, like, in the pre-decades, like, they're just pumping out films.
Well, yeah, and there were a lot of bangers back then.
Yeah.
I feel like more of the newer stuff is kind of not as great. But I think that's just a poor mixture of, like, CG slash...
Oh, sure.
Like, you know...
Yeah.
The modern, like...
Like, yeah, the new wave kind of, like...
Yeah, all of that stuff kind of,
like, the modern, like...
into it.
The blockbuster, like, mentality.
Aesthetic,
yeah. It just kind of ruins
that kind of
things.
Ruins, like, the
like
purity. The purity of martial arts films, you know?
We like the... like, the homemade aspect of it, you know, that's like
some gritty and
something gritty, something that's like, yeah,
it feels very,
and it's fine if it's, like, sloppy and, like, not well done, like that's kind of the texture of it. But when you go into the Hollywood, it's like throwing makeup on top of it, and you're like, it just kind of looks like it now looks really, really fake.
Yeah.
Like, you're just trying to, like, go over it or whatever. And also, just, you know, early 2000 CG is a bit of its own, but yeah, that's all that it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this movie is kind of in that late era, right? 2006 is right in there. But overall, like, within this conversation, tasteful, actually, very, very tasteful. And as I was, like, reviewing it for the notes, I was kind of pretty surprised, like, how well it was done first time, especially coming off Shaolin Soccer. It was, like, in some aspects,
Shaolin Soccer was 2003.
2000, yeah.
Yeah,
so not too long
years,
ago, but yeah, definitely more heavily CGI in that movie. But here, mixed in very well. So this week, we're kicking off the Jet Li series with Fearless. This one was released in 2006. Like I said, it's directed by Ronny Yu, starring Jet Li. This movie comes pretty late in Jet Li's career. We're kind of going a little bit of everywhere with the series. We're not really doing it chronologically. So we're kind of starting off on, like, the latest, probably. And an interesting one, because not only is it one of his latest works, but it's actually his last Wushu film. And I guess it was, like, very heavily marketed like that as well during the time. And there was, like, as I was, like, watching interviews and stuff, like, you know, you kind of kept going back to it, and people were sort of confused and, like, asking him, like, what exactly do you mean by, like, last Wushu film? Like, does that mean, like, last... Because people were mixing it up with, like, last martial arts film. But Wushu is just essentially just a general term for like martial arts in Chinese. Like it doesn't mean that he's like it's his last martial arts movie. It's just his last like basically like historical martial arts movie or a movie that is about martial arts in the sense that like this movie is kind of a biopic based on how Taijin, right? And so he's a very significant figure within the martial arts history in China. And so like that, and he's portrayed a few other people based off real life. So like that's what he means by like last Wushu film. That's like it's kind of like a last like actual take on it.
Yeah, I would say Jetley is like the most iconic Wushu like figure.
Gotcha.
And like in the most traditional like Chinese kung fu.
He seems like the most pure.
Yeah,
like,
whereas like Jackie Chan is a lot more like using the environment, kind of, using kung fu at the same time, kind of, using comedy and using slapstick and mixing all of that.
Right.
Whereas Bruce Lee, he has he created his own martial arts.
Yeah, his own identity.
And his own identity through that. So like Jet Li, in the midst of all that, I feel like is, like you said, kind of the most pure of, the Chinese martial arts.
Right. Bringing out the most like honest way of telling it and just kind of like bringing out martial arts closer to what it is actually practiced versus then something that is constructed purely for the screen.
Right. Like when you think about like kung fu, I would say like Jet Li's martial arts is the closest to what you would think about when you think about kung fu.
Right. That's a good way of putting it.
Like the strikes and the like the motions and all of that.
The forms and like the styles that he does.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, and in this movie he does a pretty nice job as well. And also bringing about like a very like a good very like broad, very generalized, but a good like sort of history lesson and just kind of like introducing this part of history in this world, but also doing a good job of doing it for as a film, as cinema, like making it entertaining, kind of like a little bit of a pretty good balance of both worlds, Yeah. We could talk about that later because a thought that I had too was like, I think that this movie, in our returning conversation about adaptations, this movie does really well as far as like, what we believe makes a good adaptation. So as far as like bringing out the spirit of what the original is and then being able to retell it into something fresh, that's kind of how my opinion was off this movie from what I knew anyway. But yeah, so a little bit about Bruce Lee just for this episode.
You mean Jet Li?
Jet Li, god dang it.
Bruce Lee,
Jet Li.
Yeah.
It's okay. Forgive me. I pulled this from IMDb. So Jet Li was born in 1963. He's from Beijing. He studied Wushu since he was 8, and he attended the Beijing Wushu Academy. And by like age 11, he had claimed 5 gold national championships. He'd been doing it pretty young, very talented. I think he was like even coaching before he was like 21 for national teams. So he's definitely legit, I guess you can just say. So by the time he got started into the movie industry, his first movie that he starred in was in 1982 called Shaolin Temple. And then he really started blowing up into the 90s, starring in more and more. And then I forget when he directed his first film, but probably somewhere along there in the 90s as well. So we're kind of following his life along up until now. And like we said, his kind of like what we talked about last movies, that what's interesting is going through like these martial arts stars is who brings what to the table. Like, there's all these, between Bruce Lee, like Jackie Chan, Tony Jaa, like all these people kind of bring a different thing to the table. And Jet Li brings very, like we said, very honest, very kind of purity of martial arts in here. And this movie does a great job. So this movie is actually is kind of a very, very loose biopic based off the life of Huo Taijin. And I have it here. So Hu Hao is a very prominent martial artist from like the late 1800s to the early 1900s, between like, what was it, the Qing Dynasty and then the formation of the Chinese Republic, right, or the Republic of China. And he studied Mijong or Mijong Kwang, and pretty much his status and the way that he was became a well-known figure was not only because of like his outstanding martial arts abilities, but also for challenging against a lot of foreign fighters, and also just like the oppression that was happening during like that in time of imperialism. And so he was kind of like a national hero amongst the Chinese people during that time. During the latter half of his life, like pretty much months before he died, he ended up co-founding the Qinwu Athletic Association, which is one of the first like public wushu institutes in its time. So this movie is kind of pretty much based about that, with a few liberties as well.
Yep.
So why don't you tell me about your experience with this movie, your first time watching it, growing up with it?
Yeah, I watched it pretty close to when it was released, and I remember, like, you mentioned the thing about like it's gonna be his last wushu movie.
Right.
I when I was young, I kind of thought it was like his last movie ever.
No.
Yeah, so no! I had a lot much more sadness.
I don't want to watch it if it's his last one,
because I was like, oh shoot, like I guess he's gonna like retire or something.
Right.
And so I kind of had that mentality, but I also, because of that, I also thought like, oh, like maybe he's gonna be the best in this movie because it's gonna be his last, and he's gonna give it his all and all of that. And so, yeah, I did watch it when I was fairly young, probably in 6th grade, yeah, around that time. And gotcha. It's interesting because watching it again, I've realized I've forgotten a lot of the plot points of the movie, as it happens for all movies when you watch it.
Yeah, so long ago.
Recently, and yeah, from a long time ago. Mm. And yeah, like a lot of the flashback part, I did not even realize that was a thing, where like it's the modern day and the woman is like talking about.
Yeah.
I forgot that even existed in the movie and all that. And
well, did you see it when you saw it? Did you see it in a theater or like DVD when it came out?
I saw it. I think I saw it in the theaters because there was a theatrical run of this in America. Because Fearless, there was
because that bit was cut out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was, so then what we watched was the director's cut.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I read that there's like a couple different cuts, but the theatrical missed quite a few beats, and the whole Michelle Yao bit was entirely out.
I think it would have been better with it out, to be honest.
Really? Yeah.
I don't know. It was kind of
it's like by the time you get to the end of the movie, you're like, it's not even, it's pointless.
Yeah. I think it works better without it, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, that's why it wasn't in my memory. It's okay, that makes sense.
Michelle Yao was in this movie? What?
But yeah, I mean, even, besides that, a lot of the portrayal of the character, I actually thought he was a good guy, like, from the beginning. I don't know why. Like, when I was younger, I never had a sense of, like, he was kind of like an asshole in the beginning.
Right.
I always thought he was a cool badass just kicking people's ass.
He's just like, why did this happen to him?
Yeah,
he was such an honest man.
His family dying and all that. Like, I was like, oh, that must be really sad. That's why he's like going after these people. Like, I don't know. I had a very like poor understanding of the movie.
6th grade Lee.
Yeah, but watching it again, yeah, it made me realize all of that. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh wow, like there's actually, I think fundamentally as a story, I think it's a pretty good story, like,
right, yeah.
Like, it's nothing revolutionary,
sure,
by any means, but I think they did a good job in telling the story. Mm-hmm. It's cohesive. It runs pretty well. I did think it was a bit long.
Okay.
It
was longer.
Yeah, because of what I was talking about, right?
Actually.
Exactly. So if they had cut those things out, I feel like it would have been even more.
Yeah, like I remember blinking in this movie being done, and now I'm like, it's still going.
It's going a little long, But now I know why. Yeah, but besides that, I feel like, you know, a lot of the beats were pretty good. I do feel like it's a little bit the weight is kind of like pushed to the end, especially like
Sure.
the tournament stuff just like goes by really fast.
Okay.
Where I feel like maybe they could have, I don't know. I guess there's not really much. It's just like action after action. And I guess there's not much to like.
By the ending of it?
Yeah, by the ending of it, it's like, what more can you elaborate on it, I guess?
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, maybe that's more of a pacing thing. But
I'll talk about that too.
Yeah, overall, I really thought it was a good movie when I was younger. Like when I was in sixth grade.
You just wanted you just wanted that.
I was just like, oh man, this is so cool. And like, you know, all the scenes were awesome. And like, especially like when they're up on that big tower thing and they were fighting. And also when he was like fighting like 10 dudes at once, I was like, dang, that's dope.
Badass.
You know, like that's cool. You know? And I also thought the message of the story itself was really good too. And I think it kind of resonated with me when I was younger too. Like, you know, like the fact that, you know, you could get revenge, you know, you could always, you know,
sure,
make that and you know, get the revenge that you want. But, you know, the cycle of revenge, you know, it's interesting because we talked about that with like all the other revenge stories. We could have added this one in there too.
We just can't run away from it.
Yeah, we can't run away from vengeance, you know. But, you know, that also, you know, has a good, you know, teaching point in the movie as well, I feel like.
Yeah.
So overall, I think, you know, I had a pretty good impression of the movie when I was, you know, when I first watched it.
How about now? Anything kind of change or was kind of heightened?
Yeah, I mean, I think my critical eye sees some of the action, like, and I'm like, okay, there's a lot of moments where, like, he's just getting hit, you know, or like the other guy's just getting hit, right?
Sure. But
I think that's just part of the, you know, inevitability of, you know, movies, in action movies, you know. But I think it still holds up, though. I think a lot of the action scenes and a lot of the moments and even his acting, I think, all hold up pretty well.
Yeah.
And I think there are kind of moments with the CGI that's a little like okay, but overall I think it's great. And it's a great movie. And his last Wushu movie that I feel like it was really a good send off for that too.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I'm I mean, going into like right at his last like Wushu movie, from someone that hasn't seen his other ones, you know, I can't really compare. But I mean, it's a really solid movie. And if it's his last, I don't think I'd be like mad about it, you know, or any sense. But I was very like impressed by, like I said, the story is really solid. And also just like it's a very thematic movie, and that it's a movie that speaks for its themes. And so I was really impressed that it kept to doing that. And that, like I said, it's his last Wushu movie, and that, like, you know, it's thematically it's about, you know, like he always questions like, why does he do martial arts? And he's like clearly goes through from being one person to a whole new person by the end of the movie. And like the, you know, the reason why he practices Wushu kind of changes, and you know, that's sort of like the theme. So I was really impressed to see that. I like overall my impression of the movie was I don't know, like I didn't really have too much expectation going in, other than the fact like of knowing Jetley and knowing that this was going to be a martial arts film. Like I think I went in more anticipating this to be like an action blockbuster kind of film, and I actually didn't anticipate it to be a thematic film at all. I really just didn't expect for the movie to have any more substance than like a surface level, and so that's why I think I have a really pleasant, like a better light of the movie, because it just kind of surprised me by the end of it.
Yeah,
like by the second half of the movie, after his mother and his daughter dies, and he like goes away to the village, and it's basically a whole new movie after that. Like I didn't like that whole thing. I didn't expect like the movie slows down, you know, and like he's going through like this character change, and then all of a sudden like the story has weight to it. And I was like, oh my God, like I didn't go into this like having to like appreciate the movie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so by the end of it, I was like, that was really good. Like that was that was solid. I didn't expect this to be like a kind of having a Shakespearean element to it, you know? Like you said, the movie is really not doing anything new. Like the story of like the character that
is arrogant.
Is arrogant and then gets retribution and then like falls to his lowest point and then has to come back.
It's like the classic hero's journey kind of movie, you know.
But I didn't expect that coming out of here. You know what I mean?
Right. You expect kind of the Jackie Chan.
Yeah, I was expecting just like
action and just full of that action, and
I just wanted to have fun. I was really expecting to like watch this movie and like be having fun with it, you know? I didn't expect to be like, oh my God, that guy's family just got murdered. Like, and then like he got ripped, like it wasn't even like his fault. Like he did revenge. And then you find out like his student was the asshole to begin with. And it was just like, you ruined my life literally. And then he just walks away from everything. Like I wasn't going into this being like,
right.
You know, with that kind of emotion in mind.
Right.
you know?
Right.
And so when it was all going down, I was like, "Oh shit,
things are going down.
Things are going down." And like even like it's funny because for me, like it all came crashing in because with things like Ip Man, it's like, oh, you have the martial artist who is arrogant or wants to be better, but you know then he's challenging all these people. Like that's all kind of the same, and like, all right, this is like the martial arts movie that I'm expecting going into. And then he becomes a teacher, and then his student gets hurt, and he's like, "Nah, I gotta go get revenge." And it's like, all right, here's the classic, like, you hurt my student, like, let's fight it out, whatever. Like, all right, here we go. And then he murders that guy, and it's like, cool. But then after that, like, the penance that he pays, I'm like, whoa.
Like, yeah, like it goes,
like everything goes south.
Yeah,
like right then and there, you know. Yeah. Like I just
his mother gets killed, his daughter dies.
Yeah. I didn't expect it to go that deep. Yeah. And then after that, like I said, the rest of the movie is like a melodrama. And I'm like, I didn't expect us to be in this place for like literally an entire movie, the rest of the movie. So, but like not to be, like I'm saying that in a good way. Like I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, oh, I feel like this is really great storytelling all of a sudden. And so overall, I was just very, very pleasantly surprised. And I now like my mind of like Bruce Lee like changed from like
Jetley,
god dang it. I should like you should take a shot for every time that I mess up.
Yo.
But my light of like Jetley kind of changed of like, oh, this guy's like a storyteller for sure versus just somebody who does moves. Yeah. You know what I mean? So this was a pretty good first impression of a film for sure. I feel like that told the whole movie right then and there. Like, I have to even do a synopsis point.
Make it quick.
Make it quick.
2 minutes.
I know, right? Well, I skipped the fact that, like, all right, so, like, it's kind of a biopic, right? But, like, not really. Very loose. But Jet Li does portray Huo Yuanjia. And pretty much his father was a martial artist, and he wanted to be a martial artist since he was a kid. But he couldn't because he had asthma, and he just, like, wasn't physically capable. But he goes against his father's wishes and just kind of practices anyway. And he ends up beating like another kid that does martial arts. And so that's his childhood. And then we go into like the present day or his adult life. And he still wants to be like a martial artist. He trains seriously. And like his next goal is to be the number one in Tianjin, which is the town that they live in. And kind of like restore his father and family's name after like not being the champion essentially. And so he ends up fighting everybody in town and everybody in Tianjin to be number one. And he does it pretty swiftly. And he has to fight like the one last guy who's like an elder martial artist, right? Like he's like kind of specifically into teaching. I think Master Chin was his name.
Yep. And
basically like he wants to fight him, but he's like kind of retired, but not. And then all of a sudden one of Howe's students comes in all beat up, and it turns out that Master Chin was the one that injured him or like taught him a lesson or whatever. So he goes on his birthday to his friend's restaurant and then challenges him to a fight to the death, seeking revenge for what he did. And they fight, and he ends up murdering him. He ends up killing him in the fight. And then it's like, oh, like, yeah, our master's the best, like, well, whatever. And then one of Chin's godson ends up enacting revenge on Hao for killing his teacher by murdering his mom and his only daughter, Jade, I believe was her name.
Yeah.
And when he comes back home after like partying all night, he discovers his family was killed, and then he goes back to Master Chin's home, and then the godson confesses and commits suicide, and then after that, pretty much Hao just abandons everything. He leaves Tianjin, leaves his family's assets and everything. He even like before that he loses his friendship with what's his name? Jinsun. Yeah. Over like some drama elements, but essentially he just walks away from everything. And, you know, being in despair, he goes away to like some faraway place, just kind of aimlessly wandering essentially. And he ends up in this rural village where he's saved by the villagers that live there. And he's pretty much kind of adopted into the village and is taken care by this young woman named Moon and the grandma of the village. And through here he just kind of adapts into the village life and kind of learns to pick himself up, and Moon and grandma kind of help him ease into like the village life, and he kind of, you know, helps out with the village and things like that. And apparently he's there for like a few years, kind of gets adapted and kind of becomes close to them and close to the village lifestyle. And along the way he kind of like self-reflects on like himself and what it means to be a martial artist. And yeah, so after a while he decides to go back to his home in Taijin and leave the village, but he promises to like return. And when he goes back, he pretty much goes back and his house is still there, surprisingly, and that his old friend Jinsun was like helping keeping the house kind of up. But the entire town had changed, like it's very much modernized, like very westernized essentially, into this new age.
Imperialized.
But yeah, like everything's pretty much changed, but the people that he knew are still around, but he still has those burnt bridges. So nobody is like really coming to him. And he's not really kind of asking for help. Well, he does.
Goes to his friend
who kind of like is like still has a bitter taste in his mouth essentially. And so Huo decides to
there's like a newspaper that he reads.
Yeah.
And he sees that there's this guy, this American dude, I think.
O'Brien.
Hercules
O'Brien, yeah. Who's like basically like a, I don't know, boxer or wrestler, whatever. Just a fighter. Basically, he's like, number one, he's like beating down all the Chinese people. And overall, there's like a sentiment towards the Chinese people as like just being like belittled, essentially. So, Huang just goes in to challenge him and sort of to just restore, kind of like goes in with like the mentality of like restoring the Chinese honor, basically. And Huo fights him and he ends up winning, and does it in like a different fashion, kind of like very abiding by the rules, like not really to the death, and kind of earns the respect of O'Brien in the process. And Huo like kind of gets his name spread around town, and like now he's known like, oh, this guy like beat the Western giant, essentially.
And restored the honor of the people.
Very bringing back like the nationalism kind of thing. And it's there that he's able to kind of reconnect with some old faces, including Jinsun. And basically he has the idea to start his own association with a new kind of like philosophy that he'd adopted while he was in the village. And it was basically like practicing martial arts to better yourself and not using martial arts with force, essentially, and using like to basically practice Wushu in a way that physically and spiritually strengthens oneself at the same time. And so he goes to Jinsun with this idea, and Jinsun ends up helping back him, leaving his restaurant industry, and they end up starting the association together. And basically what happens after this is there's like another party that gets involved, the what do they call it, like the foreign chamber of commerce. And basically they're like just some corrupt, like, you know, white collared buffoons that like are from different parts of the world that are like a part of like the imperialism like within China, you know. And so they lost some money off the initial fight with O'Brien, and so now they kind of want to get their money back and like seek revenge essentially against Huo. So they challenge him in his association to a fight, which is like a 4v1 where they bring like the best fighters from yeah, and then they challenge him, which is like clearly it's not fair, whatever. But he's like, yeah, he's gonna take it because of like honor and like, you know, whatever for like his name and Wushu and such. And then well, basically he does he does take on the fight. But beforehand he meets with one of the contenders who's a Japanese martial artist, and together they kind of talk about like the philosophy of Wushu and you know, what it means to fight and to better oneself. And basically he just kind of earns the respect of the Japanese fighter. His name is Ano, by the way. Tanaka. Well, Tanaka Ano. But yeah, so pretty much you cut to the actual fight, and he's like beating all these guys, and then the corrupt guys are like, what's going, like things are kind of like,
can't let this happen.
Yeah, we can't, we're gonna lose more money. We can't lose more money. So they decide to poison him during his final fight with Tanaka. And yeah, so he drinks the poison tea, and then during like the last set match or whatever, he starts to become weak and like starts throwing up black ink. But yeah, but he still decides to go on with the fight despite everything. And pretty much the result is just that like Tanaka kind of honors him by the end of the fight and gives up the match, even though that he obviously could have won because of whatever, and just defies like, you know, like his boss, which is like some Japanese guy that's part of the whole thing. And then yeah, so Bohua ends up passing away from that, and just kind of like restores the nationalism of the Chinese people and like something like that, you know. Yes. There's a very like greater-esque-ness of it all, but that's kind of how the movie ends. But yeah, in my opinion, like the movie's great. Like I said, it's a really, like, it focuses on Huo, and it does a great, like, you know, character story up until like the last act. Like once he leaves the village and like, you know, he establishes the institute, and he's like kind of restored his name and like restored his character, and then like, it's like he has it all by the time he like opens the institute. Like he's made friends again with Jin Sun, like he's got all this stuff. And then there's like the final fight part, but there's like no real stake and like no real reason.
Honor, bro. Honor.
Like you restored your honor. What more honor do you need to restore?
Even more.
I don't understand. You know? So like that's my only quip with the movie. It's like we gotta have a final third act. What's it gonna be? But there's no real, it's just not strong enough to finish it. Like it's cool, like, you know, like I said, it's like you get the final fight for the fighting aspect, like it's just, you know, the grand finale of it. But as far as like the story, like he did so great with the plot, like 75% of the movie, but then you dropped it the last 25. You know what I mean?
I think I agree with the general sentiment. The only thing that I liked about the end was like when he realizes he's poisoned, and then he's like sitting down, and then they're like, "Oh, where's the tea? He needs to get the tea." And then one of his like disciples is like, "Oh, it was poison. We're gonna get revenge." And he's like, "No, we can't get revenge.
We can't seek revenge."
And he starts doing his death monologue.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's a little tropey, but I think that it was still good.
It's fine. Yeah.
It's just like a good wrap up of. But yeah, it's a little on the nose, but it is what it is.
But
right?
yeah. You got to stick to the.
So yeah, I mean, I like that, but I you know, overall, I think the general like story beats near the end was a little weak, like you said.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the action was okay. So I think what was cool about the ending action, the last part, was like all of the different martial arts and the different ways that they use like different weapons and stuff. I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was like a clear contrast of like Chinese martial arts versus what everybody else.
And like every time, like, you know, they would use different weapons, right? Like for one you know match, he would use spears. One other match, he would use swords.
Yeah.
different swords or like fencing, and then at the end he used the three chain nunchucks or whatever thing. I forget what that's called.
I forget what it was.
It's like the three. But yeah, I think that was pretty cool, and it's cool how
3-section staff
throughout the fight, like it changes, like how they fight changes.
Yeah.
Based on what happens, like he was fighting with the three part staff, and then when they like swap weapons.
Oh yeah, yeah.
At one point
he hits himself,
and then he's like, "Oh, you don't know how to use this, so let's swap again." Kind of like,
your weapon skills are lacking.
Little respect. and then when he breaks the staff, he turns into like two staffs. Stuff like that was pretty cool. The different, like, I think the choreography was pretty cool. My favorite one was probably when he was fighting the fencing guy. And then he's using a sword, and then like he basically like disarms him. That's pretty cool.
Well, I think it's neat that he like matches them like up until Tanaka. Like obviously it's different, but
he matches their weapons.
Yeah, it's like a sword. It's like a one-handed sword for one-handed sword, and like a staff for a staff.
Spear for a spear.
Spear for a spear. Yeah. So
pretty cool.
Yeah, that was pretty neat too. But like I said, it's kind of cool that it's very obviously a big contrast, like it's Chinese versus the West, in the sense of like, and it's like using like all these different between like the staff and like the fencing, things like that. Versus like, I feel like everything that we've seen so far, like a lot of martial arts movies, is just like martial arts versus martial arts, in that sense.
Yeah.
So it's like, kind of lacking variety in that sense. But here it's very, very kind of different, But I think the earlier choreographies are my favorite. Probably, I don't know. Maybe the beginning one. Maybe the one on the high tower when he's fighting Zhao.
That was pretty good, yeah.
That one's really good.
My favorite was the when he fights a lot of guys at once. He's like, this is too
easy.
Yeah.
Bro, that was the brutalest of all of them. Like, he just destroyed those guys.
The arms and like the legs.
Dude, he just, like when he fought everybody else one-on-one, he was like he just went light on them because they were weak. And then he challenged everybody and he pulled no punches. I was like, that's wrong. That's wrong. I would have rather fight you one-on-one than fight you if there's like 5 more of me.
Yeah.
So, no thanks. Yeah, but I liked the one with Zhao the most. Even that one had variety because it was like, and it was like the first like real kind of fight scene. Like, this is him as an adult. Like, what has he excelled to? And really for the both of them, because Zhao was like the childhood rival in that sense. And there's like a nice progression between like, it's kind of clear like they hadn't fought in a while or something. It's like Zhao's like, I got all these new moves. Like, he's like, I don't move at all. Like, I'm a rock. Very like northern kind of like Shaolin inspired. And he's like, like the influence of the fight is like in his favor. Like, he has the advantage. And it's like, and he's always putting like Hao on the edge there. And then like when he's like starting to win, like in the latter half, he like goes on to like a tiger style.
Yeah.
And is like, he has like something up his sleeve kind of thing. And I really like, he's like, he's like cat's paw. He's like tiger claw. That's such a good line. But yeah, that was really cool too. And just like the setting of it is, very neat, very nice and all that.
Yeah.
And like it's a really cool work of like the wire work. Like they're like on the ledge and stuff like that. So that was cool. But man, that last fall when he beats him, that is the nastiest fall I've ever seen.
Just like after that.
I know. I was like, of all the falls that you take and you want him to look okay, that is not one you use.
Yeah, he's dead after that one.
That was. He gets up like it's nothing. I'm like, no way.
He's like, you okay? He's like, no. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, what?
Like, if you landed on your back, fine. That man like went face first.
Yeah.
And like bounced.
He's like, I'm okay. It's like, okay, good.
Yeah, that was the grossest fall I'd seen. Yeah, that was bad. But yeah, I was like, you expect me to believe he was alive after that? No way. But I thought that choreography was cool. I mean, I really like the choreography with him and Master Chin, but the editing was bad. Did you catch that? There are clear jump cuts for like half of that fight. Like all the sword stuff, there are like very clear bad choppy jump cuts that like there are probably attempts to speed up the action, but it's so bad, like it's not good.
It's not my favorite.
Yeah, I really thought, because like I was watching this and I was streaming it and I was like, oh, is that just like my streaming bugging out? And then like no matter how many times I scrub, it's like bop, bop. Like I'm like, no,
it ain't changing.
It's so bad. So yeah, that's probably my biggest critic. Like that one scene is I don't know what happened, but it was not well done. Yeah.
I like the balance of the quiet moments and the action moments in this movie. You know, I like the scenes when he's with his daughter, you know, and
yeah, those are cool.
like the very beginning when you first get introduced to the older version of him. You know, he like barges into the house.
Yeah, it's like
he has that really serious face, and then like exactly, like he changes and kind of shows like his fatherly side to his daughter, and just like immediately you can tell how much he loves his daughter, right?
Right.
From that one scene.
Or does he?
Weird. And you know, later on when he goes to the village and he's like doing the plants, he's planting the I think the rice, and you know, he's doing that, and then all the people like stop all of a sudden, and he's like, oh, what's going on?
Yeah. He's like, I gotta go back to work.
Right. Yeah.
You guys are
and just kind of that realization in himself that like, you know, you gotta take a breather sometimes. That kind of thing.
It's not about being the best.
Right. I like that because they don't really talk at all throughout those scenes, right? He doesn't say one word, but you kind of understand through what's happening. And I think that's really good storytelling. Another thing that I noticed in this movie that I really liked was the use of color and the use of clothing and the clothing that they wear. Like, for example, in the beginning, Huo and his clan members all wear black.
Yeah.
And especially when they go to Chin for revenge, right? They're all wearing black. And it's very contrasted with how later on he starts wearing white. Yeah. And it's kind of to show like his, you know, rebirth, right? Yeah. And kind of coming back. Whereas in the beginning, the revenge and that kind of going into the darkness, right? I'm evil, man. Right, he's now. An evil dude. And it's a very like simple kind of obviously overused, but you know, that's not bad. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a really good thing that they, you know, are able to utilize the clothes and stuff to kind of also emphasize the characters and the themes and stuff like that. And so like that, I think that's really cool that they thought to do that, and you know, they use that as a way to also tell the story, which is really cool. Yeah,
you know, it's funny. Like, I mean, now that you pointed up, it's like I'm kind of seeing it because I didn't really pick up on that as the scenes are playing out. But it is true. But also, like, what I did notice is just like there is a clear like change to all in the second half of the movie. Like even in his clothes, like it is white, but it's like even just like the style of it is more like kind of like loose, more like angelic, or just like more like free in a way, you know? Like it's not kind of like tight or like showing off too much in a way. But also like the way that he carries himself is very kind of like soft. Like, you know, he's very more like calm or like stable as a person versus like when he was more arrogant, you know, he's more flamboyant. He's more like kind of like overly confident, you know, more of an active personality versus what he is, you know, in the years that pass after he leaves the village. So there is a nice black and white, or just two sides contrast of him, that kind of carry out. But I'll second that too. The village scenes are honestly, I think, my favorite in the movie, just because like I'm seeing the transition in his character like as it's happening. Like in that scene, you know, like after he like finishes being depressed and he goes to help out with the field and helps plant the rice paddies. Like, you know, he's still trying to be the best. Like those old habits of like his character are still there. And then like, you know, it's obviously not the right way of doing it. And Moon has to like redo it. And he goes to help her and he's being taught a lesson in that moment. And like I said, there's not much dialogue that really happens in this section of it. It's just all kind of character. Like, especially from Wow, he doesn't really speak at all during this time. But it's nice to like, you still get a clear vision of like him changing throughout those moments, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just a really nice breather too, just from like everything that happens that like first half hour, and like the movie really kind of slows down, and like the village is nice to see. Like there's a lot of kind of like nice change. It's just a nice like different pacing overall of the movie, you know, but also very significant story wise in that way. And like yeah, even when there's like that one kid, right, who's like, there's the ox. They call him Ox in the village because he sleeps as much as like the dying ox. And then like this one kid is like really attached to one of the oxes. I think Huang was the ox's name, or something like that. But he ends up like dying, and the kid gets all sad, and he goes to a nearby village and steals their ox. Yeah, just like such a
part of it was kind of weird.
Such a country bumpkin thing. But the village ends up like punishing the kid for stealing his ox, and then there's like this whole fight dispute. But obviously this is the first time that Hua ends up taking the kid's place, and then he's like, you gotta get beat up till this incense runs out, essentially, as their penance. And yeah, he just like gets beat up and like defends himself, and he like doesn't fight back at the end, but like starts to like parry and kind of actually defend himself. But it's like, you know, like this is the change in like his martial arts, that's being something that's defensive versus offensive in years past, you know. So like there's just nice kind of development and everything. And I really like the conversation after that, when it's like him and Moon and the kids, and he's like, the kid's like, why don't you teach us martial arts? Like, he's like, I don't want to get bullied. And he's like, I want to be strong. And he's like asking them like, well, when you do that, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, so you're just going to fight him and you're going to beat him up. And he's like, well, when is it ever going to end that you stop beating each other up? And they're like, I don't know. And he's like, well, exactly. He's like, you know, even I'm still trying to figure out why is it that I do martial arts. So that was a really nice moment. Kind of like, you know, teaching the kids, but also like teaching himself, you know, kind of like in that moment. So all that was really good. All that was like chef's kiss. It was like great. And I don't know what happened after that, but
they needed to end the movie.
But all that was good. All that was good. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, like I said, like honestly, just a good, like it's a solid movie all around, really. But yeah, the choreography is great in those last scenes as well. In my opinion, not as great as some of the earlier ones, but they're cool.
Yeah.
I think the O'Brien fight is probably the least favorite.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. Even the acting was kind of like, eh.
Yeah, super over the top. Like, yeah.
I was like, kind of cringe, but.
Like, all right, Hulk, let's slow down, bro.
Yeah.
Let's slow down. Yeah. But everything else is cool. Like, I like the montage scene, like, during that thing when he fights all the guys. And it's like the monks that, like, climb on top of each other.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, nope.
Right before the multiple fighting scene.
Yeah.
Right?
Or the Iron Head guy, he was like,
it just kicks him in the head.
That's gold. That's gold. Yeah. It's cool. Like, he's got, like, you know, he's like a very, like, Jet Li is, I see, I got it that time. Jet Li has a good, like, balance. Like, he's actually a really good actor here. He actually does a really good, just like acting job, but also like he is able to carry the story forward and also be like dramatic and like also balance like comedy. Like it's just like all the like the spices you need in like a good movie are there to kind of really carry it through, you know?
Yeah.
So is that like his style, like in all the other movies that he does?
I mean, I think it does vary from movie to movie, but I think he is the most like action figure.
Okay.
You know, like I think he is the most heavily invested in that in terms of like
committing to a role
and really, you know, being, I mean, I think Jackie Chan has grown into it a lot as well.
Yeah.
But I think Jet Li is still has been doing it for longer. I think in that more drama, like focused on the drama as well as the action, as well as, you know, like having that whole package in tow, whereas
or just being just like good, like in service of the story.
Whereas like Jackie Chan, I think he focuses a lot on the comedy aspect of it and how to make the scene more, you know, have more levity in the scene,
right,
and make it, you know, more enjoyable for the audience to watch. Which is not a bad thing at all. But I mean, like I said, I think Jackie Chan has grown a lot into the acting role as well. Like he's a really good actor as well.
Yeah,
especially
like in his later works, there are more dramatic.
Yeah, especially if you watch like movies like Foreigner. I don't know if you ever watched that, but like, I mean, Jackie Chan's a great actor. Like even in Police Story, he's great in Police Story as well, and it's a lot more dramatic.
Yeah,
sure. And there's a lot of other movies for Jackie Chan as well that's a lot more serious too. It's not just like his typical action comedy stuff. But I think when you think about Jet Li, he's a lot more. Like I said, remember we talked about that spectrum, like whereas one's more serious and one's more comedic, and I would put like Jackie Chan on the comedic side and Jet Li on the more serious side. Like he really does like commit to that role, and he's really good at that. And if you watch, we're gonna watch like the movie Hero. When we watch that, you'll kind of see that as well. Again,
gotcha.
But yeah, like overall, I think that Jet Li, that's what I like about Jet Li. Like it's like when you watch a Jackie Chan film, you kind of there's always like the feeling that he's giving you a wink, right? Like he's like, like this is funny, this is cool, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think when you watch like a Jet Li film, it's like you just kind of you're in that world, right? You're like thinking about like the situation and the world and what's happening, and the action is just like the cherry on top. Like it's like also good too, which is like, it's variety, right?
Yeah.
It's difference, and I think you can learn to appreciate that when you watch Jet Li's film. So,
and it's like comedy's cool and all, like like having fun is fine, but like I could use somebody that's straight too. Yeah,
But like I said, like not all of Jet Li's movies are like that either, right?
Sure,
I'm just saying that,
like in general. Like,
and just kind of like when you think about iconically, like his movies, it's kind of more like that.
Right. Makes sense.
But they all have like
within
the spectrum. Yeah.
So. There's a spectrum within the spectrum of the spectrum.
So yeah.
Yeah. Let me see. I guess we can kind of finish off by bringing up the adaptation kind of conversation again. What did you think of this as being a biopic?
I mean, when I was younger, I didn't even realize it was a biopic.
Right. I didn't realize while I was watching it. It was until afterward.
Yeah, I just thought it was a good movie, like a fun movie to watch.
But I think that exact reasoning is why it's good. Yeah,
me too. I agree. I don't think like just because it's a biopic, I think it's a little bit different when we talk about adaptations, because when we're talking about adaptations for other movies, it's a lot of times it's like from a source, right? Already written source, or like a manga or like a novel or something like that. Whereas this one didn't really have that. It's more like a
storyline.
Yeah, even in the story, they took a lot of liberties, right?
Yeah,
it's not like 1-to-1 the real story of the person. But I think that's a good thing, right? If you just do it 1-to-1, it would be a bad movie.
It's like it's a whole different movie.
Yeah, it's and like, a bad one, because I mean it's not that interesting, right?
Right. from like a narrative perspective.
Right, like his family dying and all of that didn't happen in real life.
Exactly.
Right? Or we don't know that happened, right?
No, he's got 5 kids.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He has 5 kids. Yeah. It's all embellishment, right? Like, so, like, to create that dramatic moment, you really have to take liberties. And I think that they did a really good job, right?
Yeah.
It really puts you into that emotional roller coaster when you, like, see that happen and you're like, oh, dang.
That's insane. I was like, oh. I was like.
Things are going down,
Hurt. Yeah, there was like a little bit of a controversy, I think, between the family and like this when this movie came out, because they were like, "Why did you portray our dad as a bad guy?"
Oh,
essentially.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So there was like a bit of that, but yeah, like it probably like it just like if you just kind of take his life, maybe it doesn't work like narratively, right. But like I do think they took like the important aspects
thematically.
Yeah. Like they took some, like you said, like narrative wise, story wise, obviously they took a lot of liberties to create a film essentially. But they kept like, I think what is important and like why he's well known and like, what he kind of stands for essentially. And like Jet Li threw himself a lot in this movie as well. Like this being his last Wushu movie and all, Like there's a there's a few things that Jetley himself wanted to say about Wushu, and I think that's probably why he took up a lot of these figures, because they kind of like kind of identified with them, and so taking what Huo kind of stood for, and like his philosophy, and also tying it with Jetley's personal kind of philosophy, he was able to like kind of create this character and tell a story and kind of get the themes that he wanted to get across, while making entertaining, and like that like formula really made it very nice. But also, like I'm saying, like kind of kept the facts of obviously using his names and his friends' names, and also like the town that he lived in, and kind of setting it within the era that it sort of happened. But also like Huo is kind of like this hero sort of character that stood up against like Western influence. Like that happens in a movie. Like you get that sentiment there. Maybe it doesn't happen exactly. Like obviously there's not like he actually fought a guy named O'Brien, but like I'm sure it wasn't that guy. You know what I mean? Like there definitely wasn't the 4v1 death tournament that happened.
And even the poisoning thing, they said he got poisoned.
He got poisoned, but it was from like a nerd, like it was like
a prescription. It might have been from a prescription, or like
it couldn't even just been like an accidental.
Right,
like,
they're not like exactly sure what happened.
Right.
With it and stuff like that. So yeah, obviously they took a lot of liberties there, right?
yeah. But like like it was. I feel like like they used what was kind of important, and like sort of what helped to know about. Like if you want to know like one for one, you can go and do some research on your own. But like. I think they did a nice job of like the spirit of this man, and sort of like maybe not his exact story, but like what he stood for and kind of his story,
Yeah, I agree.
And doing a film out of it, or like what works good for a movie. So I think like that mentality, like doing that is like is what works for an adaptation in general. Like I said, it's obviously different. Like I think it's easier to take liberties off of somebody's life here, because it's like you can screw around a lot more versus like if you have a concrete novel or like a story that's already done. Like there's more like attachment and more expectation to details within that.
Right.
Like that the more you change, the more it's like, oh wait, you're changing something that was there. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like a pivotal thing. How could you change this?
Like, no, it was written this way already. Like, why change it to that? That's kind of the difference in like changing an entire story than maybe somebody's life. So, but yeah, it is what it is, right? But yeah, so our next movie, we're gonna be doing Not Hero.
That's our third one.
Oh, but we'll be doing Fist of Legend. This one is in 1994.
It's a classic.
We're going way back. We went from 2006 to 1994.
You guys see how much younger he looks.
We're like, he actually looks great in this age. I don't know how old he was when this came out.
Yeah.
He was born in 64 to 2006. He was like
late 40s, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He looks great for late 40s, if that's the case.
Yeah.
A 94 must be looking like a teenager.
He's young.
He's got the Asian genes really flourishing there.
Yeah.
And this one was directed by Gordon Chan. Yeah. What do you think? What do you think of this movie?
Which one?
Fist of Legend versus Fearless. He's like,
I don't know how to explain exactly, but I feel like it's a lot more simpler. His acting's a lot more unrefined as well. Probably not the best thing, but I think it has a very. I think it's very charming. I think would be the word. It's very like simplistic.
Okay.
But it's like very charming. Yeah.
That's fair.
That's how it
that's the best I can do.
Yeah.
That's all you get out of me. All right.
But
cool.
It's fun though. It's fun to watch.
Is he like is his like physical capabilities even like better when he's younger?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. He flies a lot more,
Really?
Like, he's like more nimble. Right?
Oh yeah. Sure. Yeah.
He's a lot more nimble.
He's like put me on those ropes.
Right?
I'll go wherever you want.
Like his kicks are like, snappier.
Yeah.
you know,
A little higher.
Yeah.
He's got a couple more inches.
yeah.
A couple more inches. Yeah. It's funny. There's quite a bit of wire work in this movie, but everything is really downplayed in Fearless.
It's downplayed. I mean, like, obviously when like he gets flown into like the other side when he gets hit
like, during the sword stuff.
Yeah, the sword stuff. It's a little like it's obvious, but it's not like egregious, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like there are moments I think that were used really well was like on the tower scenes when he he's like almost like falling off, but then he like flips over and like kicks him. Like those are pretty smooth wire work. I feel like it's like obviously it's wire work. Like it's like that's not gonna fly, but
it's like incorporated
cool.
into like
works with the momentum, right?
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Yeah. So there was like a lot of that, but definitely no like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, like like flying across the air.
No, none of that.
Oh man. Oh, what I didn't get into is like a couple of differences. So you watched the theatrical when it first released, right? And like, so the whole Michelle bit was out.
Which bit?
The Michelle Yao.
Michelle, yeah.
The whole like Olympic, like I guess she's advocating for Wushu to be an official Olympic sport, and that's how like the film starts. And then there's like a little bonus scene at the end.
Yeah.
That it's
completely useless.
Completely useless. And it's fun. And this is funny because I watched this movie and I was like, cool. And I was doing research and I was like, I figured, oh, there's actually like a couple cuts, namely like a director's cut and then a theatrical cut. And I was like reading all these scenes and I was like, I was reading them like, oh, like I kind of missed that. But then I realized like, oh wait, I watched those scenes. So I'm like, did I watch the director's cut then? And I was like, oh, okay. Because it was explaining like there's a Michelle Yao like subplot in the movie. And I was like, I missed that.
It's like,
but this was
irrelevant.
the subplot that just is so useless. It just should have just started off with like him on the boat.
Yeah, I could have sworn it ended with him like the dream sequence or like the death sequence where he's like doing the martial arts, and then Moon comes and then
he's like, I
thought it ended like that. I could have sworn in my head it was like that.
It's like, where's this other scene come from? But there's that. They cut out the in the other village when they're punishing the kid, the fight scene between him and the guy.
That was cut out too.
That was cut out, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember that either. And I was like, I don't think that was necessarily needed,
I mean, it's kind of a long scene.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I would rather have it in actually. Because like it's action through story. Like for me, I was like, the transition of like it's more defensive now. Like it's kind of telling like where like this is the first time that he's back into a fight after everything that happened. Yeah. So it's like, what's the development going to be, So I think it was important for the story in that sense.
Yeah, I'll disagree there. But I mean, like, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I felt like it was a little like off the beaten path of that whole section. You know what I mean?
How would you
just not have it there? Like the whole I stole the ox thing was kind of weird too. I was like,
the way that it started, sure. Like, yeah, I mean.
Anyways, it is what it is. There are two different versions, so if you want to watch whichever version you want. Like I said, I don't think it like ruins the movie, right?
Right.
But I don't think like it's necessary per se. Like when I was watching it, I didn't feel like it was bad, but I was like, okay,
that's fine. Yeah. I think those two were the most significant. I'm sure. I think there's like little spices here and there, but I think those two were the biggest. In Thailand, though, they included it for the theatrical run because obviously it's Thai. Like it's Thai boxing. It's Muay Thai that he does. So they're not gonna leave it out. I'm sure into Thailand. Other than that, so the guy that played Tanako was named Shido Nakamura. He plays Ryuk in the Death Note adaptations.
Oh,
the ones that we watched.
Really?
Yeah, he voices the character.
Oh, I did not know.
I did not know that. I feel like I gotta go back and like hear. I don't know. I don't remember what it sounds like.
Yeah.
It's been so long. Isn't that crazy to say? It's been so long since you watched that movie.
Yeah. What is that movie?
What is that movie? We'll watch it again and be like, oh wait.
I erased it from my mind. I was like, no.
Not one of the brightest in the podcast.
No.
But that was the point of. Actually, we were pleasantly surprised by that podcast though, because there were a couple good ones.
Oh yeah.
That not being one of them.
No,
but,
that was not one of them. But yeah.
And what else? Yeah. So like, one of like the most prominent people was like, outside of Jetley, the martial arts coordinator was Wu Ping Yong, who's like really infamous within the industry. Like he's coordinator. He's directed a lot of stuff, like Drunken Master. But he's coordinated a lot of other things. Like he's really well known to be a fantastic coordinator. But he went to the same Peking opera school as Jackie Chan and Samo and Biao Yong, like all these guys that went to school together. I really want to watch that movie one day. You know that there's a movie based on like Jackie Chan, Samo, like when they were kids going to the Peking school. I watched it a little while ago with my dad. It's a really great movie. Yeah, we'll watch that one day.
There's a movie with Jetley and Jackie Chan.
Which
like
one?
An American one.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was called Forbidden Kingdom.
That sounds vague.
It's not a good movie.
Of course not.
I mean, like it's very like
Hollywoodized.
Yes. A lot of. I mean, the action's great, obviously, with Jackie Chan and Jetley when they fight and stuff. But the overall story is like ass. And the CGI is ass. And the American acting is bad. But, you know.
Was it an American production?
I'm pretty sure it was.
Wow.
It was like, it might have been a joint thing, but I'm not sure. But
still.
it was just kind of, like, you get the two greatest, like, martial art, you know, and then
you just like,
you have this mediocre story.
You flush it in the toilet. Sometimes it happens.
The action was cool, though, when they fight.
Were they old? Well, when
they're on the older side, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was even after Fearless. Was it? Maybe? I'm not sure.
Gotcha. Oh, that's a fine age, though.
Yeah.
That's like when he's doing Rush Hour, right? Like in that era.
For Jackie Chan, yeah.
For Jackie Chan. Yeah. But, yeah, other than that, next week, Fist of Legends. And we'll see you there. A little shout out to the Patreon page. Come and take a look. Come and see what we got. Come enjoy the fun. Join the community. Thank you guys for watching. See you next week. Peace.
Bye.